Hey everybody, welcome to the Dr. K Show. I'm your host, Dr. K, and today we are talking with Dr. Robert Fredrickson with Fredrickson Health Solutions. I think I've just totally messed that up, but that's okay. We're going to be talking all about biohacking and doing a general overview and then exploring a few different topics today inside of biohacking and what that even means. So, Dr. Robert, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. K. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. This is going to be so much fun. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let us know a little bit about you and what you have going on, and we'll start there.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Dr. Robert Fredrickson. I'm a functional medicine consultant. My online practice is Fredrickson Health Solutions, where I provide research, blogs to things I do like biohacking and just ways to help people get better health in the most minimum effective dose possible. So that's what I'm into. I love this field. I love helping people. And so I just try to share what I've learned with others. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so excited. I love hearing a lot about the different directions that chiropractors generally tend to go because it's just kind of wide in all different types of interests. And so, yeah, this will be a great topic to talk about today. So biohacking, you want to give us just like a general introduction to what it is?
Yeah, for sure. So biohacking, it's a general term and a broad term, I should say. Basically what it means is you're trying to unlock your body's potential because everyone's different. Not one thing is going to work for everybody. So a lot of people use biohacking to uncover their body's, genetic potential. So maybe they say, hey, like for some reason, when I eat a lot of fat, I don't feel good. Maybe I eat a lot of carbs and I don't feel good. Maybe I eat carbs and I feel good. Maybe I eat more protein and I feel better. And so just really trying to like hone in, find out specifically like what works for your body. Is it turning off the television 2 hours before bed? Is it, certain foods that are causing that? And it's just really just helping your body, recover faster because everyone's different. So there's genetic pathways we'll talk about today, I'm sure. There's all kinds of hackable technologies out there or wearable technologies that you can do just to see your blueprint, how your body responds. And I think it's really unique because everyone's different. We know that you can't just put everyone on a low carb diet and expect them to all perform the same. They're all going to have different results or different outcomes. So biohacking is just, I've been into this since I was in chiropractic school. I listened to Tim Ferriss a lot. It's like the 4-hour work week and just trying to figure out the most minimum effective dose, like not saying you don't have to work hard, but like work smarter. Maybe say, hey, if I do intermittent fasting, I'm able to have more brain output for these other things. And so that's what I think biohacking is in a nutshell. And there's a lot of guys that talk about this a lot more than I do, like Dave Asprey, Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are into this. So
yeah. Dr. Anthony Gustin is one that I follow quite a bit. He does a lot with keto, but he also is quite a bit into tracking and really seeing how individual things that we do in our daily life impact what's happening physiologically, like inside of our body, which is why I love biohacking so much because it goes, and you and I could probably go on, and we will talk about this a bit. It's just, if you can actually test how certain things are having an impact and gather data about different, like your environment around you, the foods you eat, how much sleep you're getting, how the things you're doing are impacting your sleep, and how recovery is and all of that. If you can have some just very basic tests that you can run on a daily basis or on a 6-month basis and really have a really great idea of what's going on inside, then you can have such a better kind of journey into better health because you're actually tracking. So that's what I love about this.
Exactly.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Don't guess, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh man. I just posted about that actually.
Did you? Nice.
Yeah. I say it all the time because people are constantly just like trying new things and they get on the next new thing and on the next new thing. But then it doesn't necessarily work for them. And that's mostly because either they weren't following it properly, they didn't understand the point of it, so it didn't fit for what they were trying to accomplish, or it just wasn't a good thing for their body in general. So I'm trying to kind of help people figure out how to use their specific physiology and really leverage that for better outcomes for what they want to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So why don't we start? I think let's just start with testing because I think it's the biggest chunk of biohacking, and there's so much to unpack. So let's start with just general testing for biohacking. What are some of your common ones of gathering data that you've used?
Yes. So there's a lot of ones out there. There's a lot of new ones out there. And so the one I just did recently is probably the most exciting one, is the continuous glucose monitor. And so before, which is interesting, is you weren't able to get these, like consumers were not able to purchase these. You had to go through a doctor, and it was like the Dexcom G6, and it was like $500 to $600 a month. And so what is so unique about those is because you can test your blood sugar, you can test your ketones, which I typically do in the morning, but you have to like stick your finger every morning. Or if you want to see how how you respond to foods, the old way, you'd have to stick your finger after that food. And if you're doing that 10 times a day, it's not really easy to do. It's not very, you get a lot of patient compliance issues. And so with the continuous glucose monitor, it's just a patch that you put on the back of your arm, like in the fatty part of your tricep, and it's monitoring your glucose 24/7. So you can see real time measurements of, hey, I ate chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Chicken for me did not do anything, right? It was just my blood sugar was stable. Coffee, thankfully, coffee to me was stable. I didn't have any blood sugar spikes. But what was really profound to me was the Zevia sodas.
Yeah.
And so I love those Zevias. You know, I try not to drink artificial sweeteners. I was going more the natural route with the stevia, but stevia was having a dramatic impact on my blood sugar. I was going, you know, from 80, 85, you know, my fasting blood glucose to like 130 within like 15, 30 minutes. And I didn't know that was happening to me, right? I had no effects, but now that I thought about it after seeing the readings, like, hey, every time I drink a Zevia, like I'm hungry like an hour later. And so
Yeah.
if you have anyone who's doing intermittent fasting, they're trying to stay into a state of autophagy, really trying to help, you know, do some
Right.
cell cleanup, et cetera. If you're drinking a Zevia, you are throwing that fasting window right out. So that was, for me, that was a big thing. Now, if someone else did it, maybe Zevia wouldn't affect them. So that's where you
Yeah.
test, don't guess, right? Everyone is a little
Right.
bit different.
Right.
And of course, like wearing that thing, you know, the typical foods like rice, those would have a big spike postprandially for like 2 hours. So I'd see
Okay.
a big impact. And just keep, for me, you know, personally, everyone's got different opinions on diet and weight loss and calories in, calories out. People say you can eat whatever you want as long as within a calorie deficit and still lose weight. But I'm like, well, if that's true, then it's gonna be a lot harder because your satiety signals, your leptin signals in your brain are gonna be thrown off if you're eating high glycemic index foods or artificial sweeteners like I was, like the Zevia soda. So I cut the Zevia soda out, and I don't need to have like a protein bar or nuts for a snack like I used to. So that was probably the biggest thing that I learned about my body. Now I'm not saying I won't have a Zevia. Maybe if I do want to indulge in that, I'll eat some fiber or eat a meal first and then have that after.
Right.
So my blood sugar is not going to go through the roof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did the Zevia affect did you take a long time to break it down? Was it the same as like when you eat carbs or like rice or sweet potatoes, or where it took you about 2 hours to postprandially, you know, come down from that? Was it the
Oh, great.
same?
Yeah, great. No, it was right away.
It was right away. So it just
Right away.
spikes and then comes right down. Is that
Well,
right?
it's
Or what?
spiked and it stayed spiked for, you know, 30 minutes to 45 minutes. The rice, it had a little bit longer effects.
Okay.
Like it took about 30 to 45 minutes to hit.
Got
And
it.
the thing was, like, I didn't want to like cheat, like, or go like crazy and like drink like a diet soda
Yeah.
because I
No, I
don't
get
drink
that.
those anyways. So I didn't
Yeah.
want to like just to test it. I guess
Right.
I could have, but I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. That's
dark.
actually a good point.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to like just to see, but I was like, no, I
Yeah.
was like, I don't drink this stuff anyway. So
Well, and you know, like if something like Zevia is going to spike your blood sugar, then you know for sure that something with a bunch of cane sugars for sure, or high fructose corn syrup is for sure going to blow that out of
right.
the water. The thing that I think is the benefit of like continuous glucose monitoring, things like that, is if you use like, let's say coconut milk or almond milk in your coffee and you test it and you see that the coconut milk or the almond milkers are spiking your blood sugar right away first thing in the morning. Well, that's not going to be super effective if you're drinking coffee in an intermittent fast. And then, you know, trying to delay your eating hours, you've just kicked yourself out of that. So if you weren't already burning ketones or, you know, already really optimizing that fasting window, you're out of it at that point. So yeah,
Right. And a lot of people wouldn't realize that. So like
I
I did half
know.
and half of my coffee
Oh,
and it didn't affect it. Like it
okay.
maybe went up 5 points from rest, but it was not
That's
big.
not significant. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Ben Greenfield, he's another biohacker guy. And
Yeah.
he was like talking about on his blog, I forget the food that he ate, but it was like significant. It was like something seemingly small. Maybe it was a coconut, but it's like, yeah, it just raises blood sugar. So
Yep.
everyone's different. That's why you test, don't guess. And that's kind of
Right.
the theme behind biohacking is just finding um, your individual, personalities and how you respond to different things, different foods, sunlight, sleep, exercise, and how
Mm-hmm.
you can best optimize that to live your best optimal life. So,
Right. And it's going to change too. So like from year to year, I was listening to somebody else talk about their testing, and what they found was that last year they responded fine to rice. Like it really just didn't blow their glucose out of the water. But now this year it is, and they're handling sweet potatoes fine, but rice is not going well. And so he was saying there's tons of reasons for that, right? I mean, it can be based on the bacteria in your gut that's changed. It could be based on your environment, or your stress just has changed, whatever that is. I mean, there's so many different things that can alter how our system internally is functioning. But I think that's a really awesome like thing to point out, which is just that things might be fine last year, but they might not be great this year. And that's, I think, the benefit of biohacking and the idea of testing periodically so that you can consistently be just seeing where you're at and what's working well and what's not.
right. And that's a great point, Dr. K, because I get people all the time say, hey, I took my blood levels last year. I got my
Yeah.
complete blood count. Last year I was good. Cholesterol was
Yes.
good.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, so what's it this year? Like, oh,
Yep.
I'm not going to test it again. You're like, no. Like this is,
Yeah.
if money is tight, like maybe there's some things we can like work out, but
Mm-hmm.
I test myself at least 2-3 times a year. Like I just do. And I have
Right.
another story I'll talk about in a second for another food that I was eating that had a dramatic impact on my levels. But everyone's different. I think you should always look under the hood, at least get your once a year for sure, but
Mm-hmm.
then do other years or other times, at least every 4 months, in my opinion, especially if you're going through a treatment protocol. You want to make sure it's working, making sure that
Yeah.
there's no tweaks that need to be made,
Yep.
etc. So,
Yep. 100%. What was that you wanted? What food was it
okay.
that, go ahead, dive into that.
Okay. So I've done my genetic testing through multiple different companies,
Yeah.
and so I know that because I have one of the markers for ApoE4, one of the
Okay.
Alzheimer's genes, just one copy, so I have like a 30% higher chance.
Right.
So a lot of researchers say that if you eat with that gene, if you eat more saturated fat, that your body has a hard time processing that. And so I took that with a grain of salt, and I did my blood marker in February, and then I did another lab in May, and I was drinking MCT oil in my coffee. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is only 3 months apart. My weight stayed the same. And I tell you what, my lipid numbers went through the roof. I know cholesterol is not the end all be all, and we shouldn't demonize cholesterol, but my cholesterol went through the roof. My triglycerides, LDL, substantially higher, like to a point I was like, that's not good. Like I need to get that down. So I took the MCT out of my coffee, and I'm going to probably retest myself in another couple months. But for
Yeah.
me, it was like dramatically like this should not happen. Like any rational person, like, yeah, you don't just
Yeah.
jump up 100 points in your cholesterol within 2 months, right?
Right.
So
Right.
for me, for another person, it might be fine. You might be okay on a keto diet. You might be okay eating lots of saturated fats. But
Right.
for my genetics, for my nutrigenomics, how I respond to foods and macronutrients and micronutrients, for me, it was a clear indication. Hey, this is probably not the best thing for me. Now I know if I had more inflammation in my diet, that's where I get in trouble, getting some more oxidative particles. So there's a lot that goes into the cholesterol talk, but just seeing that
Right.
picture of my cholesterol going skyrocketing 2 months later was very, very eye opening. So that's
Yeah.
what biohacking is testing your body, finding out what works, what doesn't work, you know.
Right. Quick question for you. Follow up on that. Did you look and see what size the LDL particles were?
No, it was just a base. So I didn't do like a
Just
Boston
basic.
Heart,
Yeah.
but it was just like I had the data. I'll probably post a video on it later. But it was literally
Okay.
like LDL was this,
Okay.
now it was this, and then you're
Right.
like, my HDL I went a little bit higher, but not like I was just like, I could probably have a heart attack any day.
Okay.
Not just kidding. I'm like, no, but I was like, this is probably not good. So I'm
Yeah.
taking the MCT oil out,
Hmm.
and I was drinking the MCT oil the day of the collection. So I don't know if that messed with it, but it was a
Yeah.
profound spike. So
For sure. Yeah, I'm just curious because kind of looking into the carnivore diet a little bit more just out of curiosity, just also because patients will often come into my office and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this," and if I don't really know what it is, it doesn't really work very well. So anyway, but one of the things that a couple of the doctors were talking about that I follow was that saturated fat may not have the same impacts on like that it raising cholesterol may not be as big of a problem as we make it out to be. But I think going back to your point, you really ought to know what specifically makes it not okay for you. If you do have a risk factor that you know in your genetics that could lead to things like Alzheimer's, that it's a useful piece of information to have, because then you can change the things that you do to try to limit that from happening and just reduce the risk a bit.
right, exactly. And I know Dr. Saladino, he talks about this a lot, but
Yeah.
so I think eating meat with saturated fat is probably the better form. But I was doing like a straight MCT oil,
Right.
that was not from food; it was already concentrated, right, from
Hmm.
coconuts,
Hmm.
processed, etc. So there's probably a little bit difference there. But for me, like it didn't work. Maybe if someone else did it, because I hear people get great results with
Yeah.
carnivore or going low carb or
Yeah.
keto. So,
Yeah.
so everyone's
I think
different.
whole food is always the best way to go. In
Right.
most cases, you'll hear me say it over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. So I eat more of a whole food,
Yeah.
diverse diet. So
Yeah. Whole food's the way to go. I mean, it's just a little bit easier on your body. You get all the enzymes that go along with the foods. You get a lot more. I mean, you get fiber. You have all those things. When you take out, MCT oil and just its base doesn't have any of the other stuff that coconuts usually have with them. So, kind of,
right. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, so let's talk about DNA testing just a little bit. Did you have one specific test that you liked the most? I'm just curious.
Oh, they're all so different. So like,
Okay.
I mean, DNA testing really changed my life. I was in practice and I was having a lot of pain, like a lot of joint issues. So I was doing a lot of soft tissue therapy, and I couldn't really tell. I thought I had, rheumatoid arthritis. I might still do because it runs in my family, but no one could confirm it because I was 25 and I was healthy, I was doing
Hmm.
CrossFit, all that stuff. And so anyways, I went and got all my nutrigenomics tested, and I found out, I'm a poor methylator, you know, I have the ApoE genes, et cetera. So I started getting on methylated B vitamins, methylfolate. And that was a big time change. Like I just felt so much better. My energy was coming back. My joints were feeling better. And so that was one test I did it through GSX Sciences.
Okay.
Since then, I've done the 23andMe.
Yeah.
I've done the DNA Profit, which is kind of interesting and tells you like which exercise works best for you, foods work
Hmm.
best for your body, for your genome.
Hmm.
So I guess I've done 3 or 4 different DNA testing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like using them. I think they still have a long way to go for developing the technology, but I think they're a great, like if you run several different panels and you use that genetic testing with all of that information combined, I think you can get a really great look into like who you are, that and kind of just different ways that you can kind of mess with that a bit.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of this, like when you get older, a lot of people already know some of these things. Like, hey, like I know that if I eat sugar or carbs, I don't feel good. And some people are
Right.
like, yeah, I can eat that and I feel fine. Or I know that long distance running really works for me, or I know that it doesn't. And so
Hmm.
these tests kind of tell us that faster, but you eventually will learn some of these things just through
Hmm.
trial and error. But biohacking is all about, hey, let's find out as soon as possible so we can
Right.
optimize our lives right now. So
Yes, that's what I like about
yeah,
it.
me too.
Awesome. So when kind of just sliding into like nutrigenomics a bit here, because it's another piece of biohacking, testing for nutrients, nutrition, seeing how all of those kind of interact. You sort of brushed on it with the, methylation factors with B vitamins. There's so many things that go on inside of nutrigenomics, but do you want to kind of give us a general introduction to that and how that relates back to biohacking?
Sure. So nutrigenomics is just really looking at how your body metabolizes certain nutrients or how it doesn't metabolize certain nutrients. So For instance, the MHTFR genetic polymorphism is probably the most common one. They say about 7% of Americans have that.
Mm-hmm.
So what that basically means is that when you ingest folate from like green leafy foods like spinach, we have to convert that to the active form, to the L-methylfolate. And if we can't convert it because we have one of these polymorphisms, either we're heterozygous, which is one copy, or homozygous, which is two. If are hetero, it's 30% reduced capacity to convert folate to its active form. And if it's homo, it's 70%. So if we have that and we know that, we might eat either more green leafy vegetables to get folate, or we might supplement with a dietary supplement. And now that gets into like, hey, a lot of the studies now are showing, hey, you can't just take any folate. You can't take folic acid that's in, it's been in like cereals and fortified foods, because folic acid has actually been shown to actually block the folate receptor. I think we talked about this last time.
We did.
But we did a little bit. So it can block that folate receptor, not allowing you to get folate into the cell. So methylfolate, methylcobalamin, and the active form of B9 of folate, the methylated form, will help you get folate more incorporated to your body, into your cells. So crucial, especially for babies developing, embryos, etc. You need folate so you don't get neural tube defects. And every pregnant mother knows this. It's usually now in your prenatal vitamin already. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, you should probably look to get more of a professional grade supplement that's including the methylfolate, methylcobalamin product in there. So,
right.
So hopefully that explains. I'm not the absolute expert in this like some other doctors, but
yeah. No, it's good. So yeah, just to kind of expand on that a bit, one of the interesting things about folic acid is you mentioned, so neural tube defects, they saw a major decrease in neural tube defects when they took folic acid and put it into and fortified it in cereals and all sorts of foods, breads, you name it. But one of the things that they found though is that when they tested whether folic acid was being converted, so what happens when you take folic acid and you take it in, it actually goes straight to the liver versus through the gut. Folate in like green leafy veggies actually goes through to the gut and then gets methylated and then used in the blood. But if it's folic acid, it goes through the liver first, and the liver then has to methylate it. And what they found is that they saw unmethylated folic acid floating around through the bloodstream, and they found it in the brain, and they found it all over. So that means that you have something that really isn't supposed to be there in that form floating around. And then studies were starting to link that to some more serious implications down the road, that it was great for what the purpose of it was, to help, reduce neural defects, which it did do. However, the long-term effects of having fortified foods with folic acid are what's like a bigger issue. So getting a supplement that has methylfolate or is already methylated, or if you just get folate from your food, that's another way to kind of help balance out that system. But got to be a little bit smarter than the supplement itself.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I research is always changing in this field. And so I guess that's why we started fortifying folic acid into foods and cereals, because we were like, hey, spinal neural tube defects are not good. We need to get some folate in their diets, but they got the wrong one in there. Right. So that's why we got to test, don't guess. We got to figure out these things. A lot of people have it. I think everyone should get their genetics tested at least once, and then you can use that raw data to import into algorithms later when your research emerges. Say, hey, like, okay, so methylation is also tied to this. There's also tied to that.
Yep.
Methylation can also tie into the choline pathway. So if we're not eating eggs, which are rich in choline, sometimes if we're not methylating, we'll steal choline. And so that's in a whole nother like biochemical process. Right. But so there's so many different things with methylation, and it's kind of like magnesium. It's involved in 300 different, enzymatic biochemical reactions on our body. It's kind of a cofactor for everything. So in my opinion, we should focus in on supplements or vitamins and nutrients that have bigger impacts on these cycles. So
yep. And actually, so I use a test called the NutriVal test on a decent portion of my patients, just because either if we're dealing with chronic illness or if I'm looking at athletes and trying to figure out how do we make sure they have everything that they need, magnesium, B vitamins, vitamin D. I mean, they're some of the most used ones in the body, right. And then they're the most commonly deficient.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's helpful to know. And then if you have a genetic predisposition to that as well, Now, if you know that from your DNA test, you know that in your diet, not only do you probably need to be using a supplement and taking that in every day, but you can also make sure you're eating certain foods to help with that too. So there's great
Exactly.
things with DNA testing, but there's some pros and cons with it. But for the most part, having more information is usually helpful. So, have you ever looked into some other tests that I know that I will use for, biohacking purposes, be like heart rate variability, also looking at things like using sleep monitors and those kinds of tracking things to help see how we're recovering, but also how we're sleeping. Have you
Yes. Yeah.
dealt
Yeah.
with
Those
that
are
at all?
very, very interesting. I was wearing the Whoop band for a
Oh
while,
yeah,
and it
Whoop.
was
Hmm.
Whoop. And very interesting. It was telling me how I slept, how I rested. It's like, hey, today is a good day to train.
Yeah.
Today is not a good day to train. And I listened to it pretty well. Like one day I was like, it's telling me not to train, but I was like, oh, but I'm scheduled to play basketball today. So I went anyways. But on that day, I really I took that data, at heart, and I really warmed up even more. And I,
Hmm.
did my warm up stretches, my dynamic stretches, all those things even more than I normally would, just because I was like, you know what, I don't want this thing telling me that I shouldn't have worked out and then I got injured. I don't want it to be right. So I just did everything I could possibly. But I've had patients that have actually told me like, hey, like my Whoop band told me not to work out today. Like told me like I was a little bit more my sympathetic nervous system was on overdrive, and they didn't listen to it and they actually got injured. Right.
Yep.
So that's where I think heart rate variability is really, it's cheap. It's very affordable.
I
Anyone can do
know.
it. And it's
Yep.
going to tell you the state of your nervous system. It's going to tell you, hey,
Mhm.
like your sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive.
Yep.
It's not supposed to be on overdrive. It's only supposed to be on in certain situations. So
Right.
now you're taxing cortisol. If your cortisol is elevated, you're taxing other micronutrients. You're depleting your body's metabolic reserve. And so a lot of things are going into that. And for athletes and anyone who's athletically inclined, like we know injuries are going to take us out of training. They're going to take us out of our feel good state. We're not going to have any dopamine because we're going to be resting or doing stuff that's not our sport of choice. So
That's
yeah,
right.
so heart rate variability is awesome. I think it's coming out more and more research is coming out on it. A lot of people are doing
Mhm.
things to help, reduce sympathetic tone, like meditation or deep breathing. And there's all kinds of apps out there that you can use as well. I think one is Heart Math is one. Headspace is a meditation app.
Yep.
There's a breathing app that I used. I forget the name of it, but yet all those things can help, with
Mhm.
heart rate variability. So I think that's a great question. We talked about this with you as well with your training, and
Yeah.
you use one, right?
Yeah, and actually, so I used the least expensive, like way in to heart rate variability. Basically, what I did was I downloaded an app called Elite HRV, and then I used a polar chest monitor that I already had.
Nice.
They work with that one. I think they can sync up with the Oura ring, but the Oura ring is
Yes.
really expensive. It would be awesome to have, but it's just a higher cost of entry. And then they also sync with their own core sense monitor, but I had already the polar monitor. So what I just do is I just put that on in the morning, which is like looking at just research on heart rate variability. It's helpful to see overnight how you do, but the most research and the most like effective time to be testing is in the morning. And so that's what I do. I follow that, and when it tells me I'm over in sympathetic or parasympathetic, then I just adjust accordingly. I can also see if I've trained the previous day, if my nutrition was on point, because if I am, or if it hasn't been over the past couple days, because if I'm training and my sympathetic system's just like in overdrive, I'm like, we probably need to be altering how we're eating a little bit just to make sure that we're actually recovering.
Right.
I think the most interesting bit about testing heart rate variability for me was when I had a super emotional day due to something that just happened with a patient in a clinic. Like it wasn't bad, it just like was a lot. And I the next day was just super stressed over on the sympathetic mode, and I was like, oh, that's so weird. Like I didn't
Yes.
expect that at all. I didn't work out, I didn't do anything. It was just a super like emotional event, like socially. And that had such a crazy impact on my heart rate variability, and I didn't really think that that would be a thing. But that's why testing is so cool, because you can see
Yes.
how those things are interacting with your body.
Yeah, for anyone listening, like you can test your heart rate pretty easily now. I know with COVID, everyone's taking the pulse oximeters off the shelf, but you can get a pulse ox $40, $50, and you can check your resting heart rate in the morning.
Right.
You can, so that's what I did before I even got one of the fancier ones, is I would just put my pulse ox on first thing in the morning, check my resting heart rate. Say I was doing a triathlon training a long time ago, so it was really low. It was like in the 35s. And I was like, check it every day, 35, 35. And then one day it was like spiked up to 45, 50. I was like, okay, something's
Mm-hmm.
going on with my nervous system. Maybe I didn't sleep well.
Right.
Maybe something happened where I got less sleep last night. We all know sleep is huge, and we'll talk about that later. But
Yep.
yeah, so all those things can affect you. And if you didn't sleep well, we know that chance of injury or chance of something else happening that next day is
Mm-hmm.
even higher. For example, if when they have daylight savings time, this is an interesting study. So the day after daylight savings time, when you lose an hour of sleep, you have a substantially higher chance of having a heart attack that day.
Really?
So, yes. So that was and you also have a higher chance of getting into a car wreck from that lack of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So it all makes sense. We lose just 1 hour, right? I
Right.
think daylight savings time, we actually lose like an hour 20 is what they estimate. So
Mm-hmm.
that is having, substantial impacts on our health just from that lack of sleep. And so the Why We
That's so
Sleep
crazy.
book by Matt Walker, he was talking all about these statistics on daylight savings time, for example. And I thought that was so interesting.
That's super interesting. Makes sense though. I mean, talking about sleep, there are some things that we can do as far as on the biohacking scheme of things and that kind of realm. There's lots of things that we can do to help to optimize our sleep. Circadian rhythm is really what we're talking about here. And I actually saw some interesting studies about timing that we eat can have an impact on our circadian rhythm. But let's talk a little bit about like blue light glasses and this whole science thing behind, should we be wearing blue light glasses? Why should we be wearing them? When should we be wearing them? Have you gone into that at all?
Yeah. So blue light glasses are there to basically block blue light that we are using, that we're getting from television, that
Mhm.
we're getting from our iPads, etc. We're supposed to get blue light. We're supposed to get natural light during the day. That's our body's natural circadian rhythm, right? As we wake up, when we wake up, we should get sunlight right there. Get that cortisol awakening response, get the sunlight into our eyes, start these whole awakening processes. But unfortunately, that with all the technology we have today is in computers, as well, as we get home and it's nighttime, but our body still thinks it's day. So it's not producing melatonin. It's actually producing another chemical called melanopsin. So that's supposed to be activated during the day, not at night. And so we're getting all of these pathways switched. And so that's where some creative guys lots of them started creating blue light blocking glasses.
Mhm.
And that is to block some of the blue light so we can still do those things that we love. I have, varying thoughts on that. I think blue light blocking glasses are good in a pinch. Like if right now we have kids and me and my wife barely get any alone time. So when they finally
Yeah.
go to bed, we might watch one show and I'll put the glasses on just because
Yeah.
I don't want to, the best thing is to turn the show off and read, get like
Yeah.
as much, much to as little light as possible. But if you have to do something, blue light blockers come in a pinch. Or if I have to do like some late night work, I'll put the glasses on my
Mhm.
computer just so I'm not activating the wrong signals. So I stop producing melatonin. So I want to get as much melatonin production as possible. So have you played with blue light blockers, Dr. K?
Yeah, I have. I personally really like to use them, especially if I'm going to be on my computer, past nighttime. So dark,
Yep.
it gets dark out and then I'll usually throw them on, or like I'll make sure that my screens have a blue light blocker on them. That's
Yes.
another
Yes.
thing that works just fine. And my phone just automatically does it for me. Like I literally see it change to yellow,
Yes. Yes.
which works just fine. But also because I like to rent a lot of my library books, but I do it through an app on my iPad. So
Right.
it
Right.
sort of is like, I would love to be able to read. I love reading physical books, but it's so convenient to be able to get them on a technologically like tech advice. And so, or device. So that's what I use. But having blue light glasses or like a blue light blocker on the screen, I think helps a lot. I think where it really comes into play though, is if you are waking up fatigued a lot, and you just really can't figure out why you're waking up fatigued. I mean, there's so many different things it can be, anywhere between like nutrition to your environment to stress to blue light. I mean, there's like a million things that it could be, but you can start, this is what biohacking is all about. You can start like testing certain things and seeing what kind of impact it has over a couple of weeks. And you use yourself as an experiment of one,
Right.
but you get to see how changing up certain things really make an impact. And that's, so yeah, so blue light glasses are fine. I don't use them probably as much as some other people do, but I think that they have a purpose.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
for me, so that's a great biohack, and an easy biohack. If you don't even have the glasses, is just set your phone. Like you can turn your brightness off automatically. Have it like my computer does it at 9 o'clock at night. I go to bed at 11.
Right.
So at 9, all the lights start to dim, go into the lighter hues, etc.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
or you can, the glasses I got were like $10 on Amazon. I don't know how good. I know there's
Right.
different brands out there, but
Right.
I think it blocks some of the light. It probably doesn't block all of it. So I wear them. I know I'm still getting exposed to lights,
Mm-hmm.
but I try. You do what you can. So I wear my glasses pretty much every night at 9, just because my recent routine is do a little computer work, watch
Sure.
one show on Netflix, read a little bit of my book before I go to bed.
Sure.
That's it. So I wear the
They
glasses.
even they even have some lights now that you can, like light bulbs now that you can put into your into your lights, and they will change colors based on what time of night it is. Like you can go deep into this if you want to. Just
Right.
depends on what you want to do, and what's important and what you need. So I think maybe that's another point to make, is that there are some people that are very sensitive to certain things because of certain things that are happening inside their body. So I'm talking about really like chronically ill people that are having to eliminate a lot of certain types of stressors on the body to heal and get to a place where they are kind of back out of that, chronic illness. And sometimes they really have to eliminate a lot of things in order to help get them to that place. So sometimes that's
Right.
where some of these things can be helpful too.
Yeah, because for chronically stressed people, especially like they have severe HPA axis dysfunction. Yeah,
Right.
the lights might not be a big deal to someone who's healthy, but
Yeah.
to them, it's going to be a big deal because their body has to
Yep.
respond to that stress. That's
That's
why
right.
they're waking up with their resting heart rate so high and their heart rate variability is off and their sympathetic nervous system's on overdrive because they're not
Mhm.
sleeping. They're not producing melatonin. They're not responding to stress right. Their cortisol regulation is off in their body. Maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low. Maybe they're past all that and they're having the, HPA axis, like stage 3 exhaustion phase, and they're not producing anything.
Right.
So that's why
Right.
we test, don't guess. There's a lot of tests you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone listening, it's just biohacking is just a way to find out what works best for you. If it doesn't work, find someone that can help you, like Dr. K, for example, that you can go to and who can do some lab analysis on you. And you can figure out, hey, I'm
Right.
not feeling right. I've tried this on my own. It didn't work. Maybe I'll go ask Dr. K. She can run some lab tests on me and see
For
what's
sure.
going on. So,
Well, and there's quite a bit. I also want to say too, I think in the functional medicine world, there's a lot of physicians just like you and me that are a little bit more into this than some other physicians. It's just, I think once you start really getting into the physiology of how the body actually works, that's functional medicine. That's where we spend the majority of our time. Is
right.
like how does each system function, and then how do they all function together? And I think that's one of the things, is you'll start to see a lot of functional medicine physicians, just same as you, same as me, that are in this world a little bit more, just because we're starting to see research. We're in this research, we're looking for it all the time, but also the impacts that it's having on helping our patients get better. And that's kind of a key piece of, I think, how it all connects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great point.
That's awesome. So, last thing, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can use biohacking to help focus a little bit better, and how it can help us with our brain health and cognition, because I know that people would love to know how they can focus better.
Okay. So there's a bunch of different,
Yeah.
there's a bunch
You
of
can
different
just
ways to,
do like a general overview.
okay. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. And
Yeah.
usually focus, attention span, mental capacity, those are all tied to the brain, right? So they're all tied maybe to the HPA axis system as well. Stress. We know that if we have too much cortisol, for example, that cortisol is going to actually atrophy parts of the brain, parts of the limbic system, parts of the amygdala, part of our, fight or flight or aggression pathways. So if those are impacted, we're going to get angrier at little things. We're going to have harder times focusing or having harder times getting more attention to certain subjects. And so meditation is one thing that is cheap. It's easy. Anyone can do it. Tim Ferriss talks about some of the most successful people, business owners, entrepreneurs, et cetera. They all have one thing in common, and they all meditate. And so for me, that's something that's hard to do. It's hard for me to like get still with myself, but I'm trying. I try to do at least 5-10 minutes in the morning before all the kids wake up and everything else starts taking away from my day. But that's one way to start, helping your body start to calm down. Maybe it's gonna help your parasympathetic nervous system. It's gonna help that calm, relaxed feeling. We know it's gonna also shift beta brainwaves to more alpha brainwaves. So beta is kind of like your day-to-day brainwave state. It's conversational paced, but it's more scattered thinking. When you get to that alpha state, which is more calm, relaxed, more focused, that's where you really can start to learn, start to process some of these memories to the hippocampus, some more of our long-term memory, and actually apply that to. So if you're studying for a test, for example, you'd want to be more in an alpha brain state, not a stressed beta state, or one of the other ones. You'd want to be more focused, really comprehend everything that's going on. So one way to do that easy biohack is just, hey, first thing you do when you wake up is don't look at your phone. Don't look at the phone. Go do something you like doing. Maybe open up the windows, get some sunlight, start activating, your normal circadian rhythm with sunlight. Maybe get some water, and then do a quick meditation, grab some coffee after that, whatever your morning routine is, but make it something that you can do realistically, every single day. Make it a pattern.
Right.
And so hopefully that answers. There's a lot of supplements I like too for memory and cognition. One is Bacopa. Have you read any studies on Bacopa?
Yeah.
Dr. K? So Bacopa, it's amazing. It's a nootropic. It's an antioxidant. It's an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So what that means is it increases acetylcholine in the brain. And it's actually got some studies, not on humans, but on rats that actually showed new neurons being grown. They call that neurogenesis over time by supplementing Bacopa. And so in India, they actually consider Bacopa to be like a sacred herb. And it's one of their most sacred herbs they use over there in Ayurvedic medicine. So it's very interesting. I took that a lot in chiropractic school. I don't know if it helped or not, but I took it, and now I've actually been looking at the research more and more. I'm like, okay, Bacopa is pretty interesting. So it's one of those supplements that you can take. The supplement I take has Bacopa, has like a phosphatidylserine in there, theanine, et cetera. Those all are, for the HV axis, system, balancing the beta brainwaves to one of the alpha. So that's a biohack that I do. I do the supplement, but I also do the meditation, which is free. So anyone can do that.
It's so good. Do you have, what you kind of just listed off, is that sort of what your morning routine looks like? Is kind of getting up, getting out, like looking at the sun a bit, getting some sunlight, water, meditate, coffee? Is that kind of what
the ideal day, like in a perfect day, if I had to draw it out for you, it'd be like, yes, wake up, no alarm, get some sun, move around a little bit, stretch, get some water, meditate, ride the Peloton 30 minutes. With my coffee, and then, get ready for work, watching Sports Center. That's like my ideal day.
Sometimes, I like it.
Yeah. Some days it doesn't happen that way, but some days it does. And I do know, if I do have a day like that or a morning like that, my day is pretty good after that. So.
Yeah, I really think that like morning routines have such an impact on, like, it's the concept of winning the morning, in the sense, if you win the morning, you win the day. And I think that's been a huge help for me. Meditating in the morning is great. But sometimes what I have to do is I have to use like a method that's like a trigger, and then actually turning it into the habit or the ritual and doing that, and then using a reward at the end. So I'll sometimes do like drinking a glass of water once I wake up as my trigger, and then I'll basically force myself to meditate. It doesn't have to be long, right? 5 to 10 minutes of a guided meditation is all you really need every day. And then my reward is coffee.
Oh, that's a good reward system. I like that.
Yep. Yeah. Or if I'm not wanting coffee, I'll do like matcha or like green tea or black tea or something like that. But something that makes it so that you get that reward after making that a habit or ritual that you want to incorporate. So
right. See,
I'm all about the tricks to get your brain to actually do the things.
Yeah. I guess I actually do that subconsciously, because I'll make my coffee. I know it takes 5-10 minutes to make. So that's
Yep.
when I'll go like lay down, stretch, meditate for a quick 5-10 minutes
Perfect.
while it's brewing.
Yep.
Sometimes I get distracted. I look at my phone, but I know if I put the phone down and I don't do it,
Hmm.
I usually have a much better day. So
Yep, I would say that's my biggest challenge is not to like immediately opening up my phone. I think if I had a little bit more freedom to wake up when I wanted to wake up instead of having to wake up to an alarm, then that could be a little bit easier. Maybe leave your phone, in another room so you don't pick it up. I don't know.
right.
But anyway, that's so great though. Morning routines, I think, are a pretty big part of biohacking. So is nootropics. I never can say that. I want to call them like nootropics, but it's like nootropics anyway.
I think it is nootropics. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. But anyway, yeah, they're really, really cool though. And I was actually listening to another podcast with somebody who actually has supplements that are nootropics. And he has been doing more research on different ways that we can take supplements so that that our body like adapts to using them and is actually bringing them in and absorbing them and using them properly. So there's
Nice.
so much stuff to learn in this field, but those are maybe for another another time.
For sure.
There's
For
so
sure.
much we can talk about in each of these kind of bits, but I feel like we gave quite a bit of a general overview of what biohacking is, why you might want to get into it, what some of the benefits are of biohacking. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to finish up on?
I guess for what I do for biohacking and
Yeah.
find like the most effective thing for your body. So for me, like when I get home, I like to stretch my hip flexors. I like to stretch my thoracic spine because I know I might have been in a seated position too long. So 5-10 minutes with that. I think it's just finding like what makes you feel better. What makes you feel better is going to be different for everybody. So maybe for me, it's my hip flexors. Maybe for you, it's your hamstrings. Maybe for another person, it's getting the rotator cuff stronger so that they can perform a CrossFit move or a triathlete position. So everyone's different. For me, it's stretching. Also magnesium in the
Yeah.
morning. That's been my like biggest biohack ever. Just having that consistent magnesium with my water. Before I do my other supplements, I always get the magnesium in, and I've noticed tremendous, differences with my muscle tightness, my mental capacities, my stress resilience, just by doing that. And magnesium, everyone needs
Yeah.
magnesium. In my opinion, I think 80% of people are deficient.
Yep.
Maybe probably more now in everyone's stress states. So
Right. things are all different. They're all out the window at this
right,
point.
yeah, throw everything we knew out the window. Yeah, we all working from home now. It's completely different. So
Oh man. Yeah. Oh, that's a great routine. That's awesome. So, okay. So there's a couple of things that you have going on. I know you have a Facebook group where this month is the one that you're doing a lot of focus on movement, daily movement, right?
yes, so that kind of got delayed. We went on a trip, but the
Oh,
goal was to post. I might start this next month, Dr. K, to be honest, because
okay.
I got a late start. But
Well,
yeah, so I
that's
wanted
okay.
to do, so I talk so much about functional medicine. I wanted
Yeah.
to just do a month where I focus on just self-care, moving
Love it.
well, teaching your body, like what patterns, what stretches work best for you. Do you have upper cross? Do you have lower cross? Do you have one of the opposite patterns? And
So
figuring
great.
out, yeah, maybe all three, right? So maybe how can you figure out how to best, get your body back before an injury happens? How can we prevent injury?
Hmm.
So that was going to be one of my topics, and I probably still will do it. And I'd love
Okay.
to have you on my show for when
Oh
we do
yeah.
that. But
But what we'll do is we'll have a link to that group so that people can go find you. And whenever you do end up doing that, they can
okay,
join. I would highly recommend doing that. Daily movement, if it's not something that you guys do like on a daily basis, you should look into doing it because it's really helpful. And then you also have a podcast too, right?
yes, I have a podcast. It's called the Fredrickson Health Solutions or
Perfect.
Fredrickson Health Show. We're on Apple iTunes, Spotify. We're also on YouTube. So, and
Awesome.
you were my last guest. So
I sure was. So you guys should definitely go check that out. I will link that as well. And if they want to find you on your website, anything like that, where can they find you?
oh, thank you. So, yeah, they can find me on Fredrickson Health Solutions on
Perfect.
Instagram, on Facebook, and also on fredricksonhealthsolutions.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I hope you guys go check some of those things out because there's, man, the podcast we did, I thought was great. So you definitely should go check that out. Go over and like and subscribe to his podcast and his channel, however you guys usually listen to those. I know when we started talking, I went and looked and listened to some of your other podcasts, and they're great. So I highly recommend doing that. You guys, please make sure to subscribe to this channel as well, so that you can continue getting interviews just like this one. We have a ton more coming up. So thank you so much, Dr. Fredrickson, for being here today. I loved this episode. Biohacking is a huge thing that I'm just like getting more into. So this was super fun to do.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. K. I look forward to doing it again soon. So have a great day, and thank you all for tuning in.
Yay. Thanks, guys. See you next time.